And we start in East Africa, where Tanzanian President John Magufuli has taken over as chairperson of SADC. Magufuli takes over from Namibian President Hage Geingob at the SADC Head of State Summit in Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. President Cyril Ramaphosa is attending the summit with a South African delegation. In his acceptance speech, Tanzanian President John Magufuli pledged to put industrialization as top priority during his chairmanship. He's also called on SADC member states to unite and push for the lifting of sanctions on Zimbabwe that were imposed by the West. The theme of the two-day summit is titled "A Conducive Environment for Inclusive and Sustainable Industrial Development, Increased Intra-Trade and Job Creation." The meeting is expected to look at intra-regional trade and security in the region, SADC region. The summit will conclude tomorrow. So to talk a little bit more about this is SABC East Africa correspondent Daniel Kijo. He joins us now for more. A very good evening to you, Daniel. Thank you so much for the update. So President Magufuli officially opening the gathering with a call for African countries to redouble their efforts to industrialize their economies. Did he expand more on what he meant by this?
Yes, thank you for having me. Basically, he is preaching what he practices. President John Pombe Magufuli has been pushing Tanzania, the country he leads, towards industrialization by changing policies, by doing very strong and radical changes to policies that his former predecessors had left. He has been trying to improve make systems more efficient. He has revised taxes. He has improved, adjusted the environment of doing business by creating a new ministry to work with the investors, etc., etc. So he himself, leading Tanzania, has been really driving Tanzania to become an industrial country. Now, as a new chairperson, as you said, when he spoke, he was very adamant that the only way that East African economies would be able to change the lives of its people, the 327 million people within the SADC region, would be through technological advancement, would be through industrialization, would be using the raw materials, converting raw materials into products, agro-processing industries, etc., etc. Also intra-trade between the products made from industries in the different countries being traded and sold to the neighboring countries within the SADC region. So this is something that he believes and practices himself very, very adamantly.
About youth participation in innovation, but also the role of the public sector or the private sector in improving greater participation of persons in the SADC region in their various economies.
Well, within Tanzania itself, the private sector has been getting a big support from the government, because there have been issues in the past where Tanzania, there were policies that were not very clear. There were taxes that were a bit harmful to industries and investors and the private sector. But it seems it's not just a Tanzanian problem, because the collective economies of the SADC countries were expected to grow by 2020 at least by 7%, but it looks like they've only grown up to 5% as per 2017-18. So now he says that the private sector is key, and these countries have to harmonize policies. They have to be clear, policies that don't keep changing. There have to be taxes that allow people to invest. There have to be the government has to work hand in hand with the private sector to ensure that investors are comfortable and the private sector is comfortable, so that it can pay taxes and that will go back into infrastructure development and issues like that. So the private sector and the governments within the region have to come together and work together to ensure that both sides can benefit within the economy.
So Daniel, was much said about the SADC Business Council, which was held at the opening of the summit.
Most of the conversations revolve around intra-regional trade, revolve around finding ways that the Secretariat would solve the problems that have been causing the GDP of the SADC countries to decline in the recent 5 to 7 years. In 2010, the growth rate went up to 8%, but after 2010, the last couple of years, the numbers have gone down. So now the issues are, what can the business communities do within the SADC region to ensure that they fix the problems that cause a country's economies to not grow as well and to improve.
And a lot of that would rely on affordable energy. And with regards to Tanzania itself, you have the Refugee hydropower plant or project. Has much been said about how that can at least contribute to this problem?
Yes, energy is a big aspect to industrialization. You cannot industrialize if you don't have the power and the energy to propel and to push these industries to produce. Now, Tanzania has a huge project. President Magufuli called it a flagship project of the Refugee hydroelectric plant that is being constructed right now. A plant that is said to sort of help improve the energy challenges that Tanzania has had for a long time. But also, during the opening ceremony today, the African Development Bank President, Dr. Adesina, also spoke about how the bank has been investing in energy projects across the region. The total value of investments within the SADC region by the bank is $13 billion. And some of that, South Africa itself, there's a $5 billion energy project that is powering some parts of Southern Africa. So energy is going to be a key part in helping countries industrialize. But also agro-processing industries would be also key, because many countries in Southern Africa produce agricultural products. Now it's about building industries that convert this raw material into products that will eventually bring value and change the economies of the country.
And speaking of working together on helping bolster the region's collective power in terms of economic industrialization and growth, Zimbabwe was brought up, the issue of sanctions against it. What is SADC proposing ought to be done in order to assist it?
Well, the actual steps to be done or have not been, agreed on. But what the new chairman, President John Paul Magufuli, said was he openly asked the SADC member countries to remove sanctions that have been put on Zimbabwe by the West. He says Zimbabwe has turned a new leaf. Zimbabwe is trying to pull itself out of a history that was challenging, but now they're looking to build a new future. So he asked member states to strongly consider removing sanctions. Now, perhaps tomorrow, once the resolutions by the leaders, the closed sessions would have been concluded, we may get an indication of exactly what steps can be taken and will be taken with regards to the Zimbabwe situation.
Just a quick and final one. Speaking of greater regional integration, President Magufuli raised the issue of perhaps Swahili one day becoming an official regional language. What was the appetite for the suggestion?
Yes, President Magufuli has been pushing for Kiswahili to be the fourth language within the SADC region. It is spoken by about 6 countries within these SADC countries within the bloc. And it was agreed. In fact, it's not just a suggestion. As I speak to you now, it was agreed that Kiswahili is now the fourth language within the SADC community. And it was met with big cheers. And in fact, just to give an highlight, if you follow President Ramaphosa's Twitter, he tweeted in Kiswahili this morning, saying just highlighting his trip and talking about how the whole SADC experience summit has been in Kiswahili. So it looks like Kiswahili is about to enter these 16 countries.
All right, thank you very much, Daniel. Pole, I guess. Daniel Kijo, our East Africa correspondent. The fourth official language within the SADC region, Kiswahili.